what are the major lessons to successfully raising capital? I'm sure this is a question that you get asked all the time. As somebody who has been successful raising capital, I believe there's a unique perspective you've had, because you've not just done it once, you've done it a couple of times. So again, I'll ask, what are the major lessons to successfully raise capital?
I think in hindsight, talking to friends who've done this, I mean, for me, you know, Richard, I'm unapologetically Christian, and so I apply a lot of biblical truths to what I do. So I've just come to realize the Bible says if you see a diligent man, he will stand before kings. So diligence is one of the things. And so as people come to look at a due diligence on the organization, be diligent about how you deliver information to them, data to your investors. Believability of the idea is almost at par with believability of the person. And so I think people have to either have, so if you're doing it for the first time, you're going to have a challenge in that you have to have a really compelling concept, because what people buy into is your experience. I can't sit here and pretend to you that the fact that I've not done it before helps. But if I've never done it before, what happened those days is that I knocked on 200 doors and one opened. Whereas now down the line, I knock on fewer doors and they open, because either someone really likes you or they can't stand you. So they love your story or can't stand your story. So you know very quickly, is it going south? Is it going north? Is it happening? Is it not happening? So I'd say my experience is research, data preparedness, if possible. The secret I've discovered works very well is a minimum viable pilot. Product. Something that you can actually demo, that I've done this to this point, I just need to scale and I need your help to scale. That does a lot for people than a concept on paper. So, to be realistic, the last capital I raised, I first went and made sure I had a contract from a very large company. It wasn't an easy contract to get, but I had a contract. So because I had a contract, my experience plus believability kind of paired up, because how did you get a contract from this large organization? So that's how you start to find people saying, okay, I don't want to miss this bus. The fact that the person has this contract, it helps. So have something. You have to bring something to the table. If you're raising capital, bring something to the table. You're not going to just convince someone because you have an idea that they should put money behind you. And another thing I've seen with a lot of us younger entrepreneurs is getting upset because people say no. My God, you will have many no's. You will have many no's. I got used to no's. And I realized it's not personal. Don't personalize this thing, you know. It's your dream, it's your vision, but I've seen people who refuse to speak to me again because I didn't back them. And we're not trying to be best friends, you know. I do wish them well, but not everybody will be as passionate. First of all, nobody's as passionate about your idea as you are. And that thing you have to always realize. I was speaking somewhere and I was telling them, when you study the book of Nehemiah, Nehemiah went and asked the king in the Bible about whether he could have certain resources for going to build up the walls of Jerusalem. But first he had to speak the king's language. You know, when he came to the king, he said, the city of my fathers and ancestors. Now, he was talking to a Phoenician king. That means these Phoenicians were so big on ancestral stuff. So he didn't just come, because remember, it's the king who had shut them down. So he didn't just come and start saying, Jerusalem is messed up, I need help. You know, he said, the city of my fathers and my ancestors lies in ruins. Immediately, he tapped into something the king was passionate about.
There was connection. He made sure there was a connection. So you can't just come ask for capital because you're passionate. Make a connection. Can I just piggyback on this and say, everybody always asks the question about how to raise investment. I want to push on to this question and say, when is the investment wrong? because the desperation for looking for capital, you begin saying yes to everybody. So I want to know, when should you be like, or in your life, have you had times when you're like, I wish I didn't take this investment because now it's costly?
Yeah.
So the question I think I'm trying to push and ask is, what kind of investments would you be like, yo, I know you want money, but keep away from this because of this and this and this?
I mean, so money is a means to an end. You've got to have it in your heart, mind. What's your end game? And what kind of capital brings you to your end game? Because some capital is punitive. I'll say that and risk to say this. Sometimes you have to live to fight another day.
Sometimes you have to live to fight another day.
So that means that you could end up taking that capital that's not as ideal, but it's the only one available. I'm not going to tell someone walk away from it because it's not ideal. I don't think you're going to find 100% ideal capital unless it's yours. Anybody you bring into your business, they're called angel investors, but there's sometimes nothing angelic. There's nothing angelic about that kind of money. So, you have to study dilution clauses, how to protect yourself, right? Mark Zuckerberg doesn't own all of Facebook. In fact, he's not a majority shareholder in the sense of 50 plus 1%.
Yes.
Right? The last I checked, I think he was at about 11%. I don't know where he is now, but he has protected himself by the kind of protection rights that he could get for a founder. So sometimes you may not necessarily be the majority shareholder, but you could get protections as a founder. You could get sophisticated in how the paperwork is done. The fascination I find with people who want to own 90% of their businesses, I've found in the area of things like what I do in fintech, that world moves so fast that to stay as a 90% owner for 5 years can cause you to have a slow death. You could end up becoming 90% of something that never moves, right? Equity Bank is a publicly traded bank. Has anyone ever bothered to look at what the shareholding of Dr. Mwangi is? I guarantee you it's not much. So you don't have, but look what he's built. Look what that entire team has built, right? Admired all over the world. I don't know if he gets the right admiration in Kenya, but admired all over the world for what they've achieved. But he's not necessarily a 20% shareholder. This fascination with shareholding, I know you need to keep control, but explore ways to be protected as you look for this capital. So I won't say don't take the capital, because how will you scale? How will you have experience? How will you grow? So case in point, a gentleman came and told me how he refused certain capital 4 years ago. He came to see me just about 3-4 weeks ago. Nothing has changed in his business. He's now saying, maybe I need to shut it down. You might have stood a chance, because that capital would have changed his business and how he was looking at things, and sometimes the help that comes is also showing you your blind spots. Let me tell you, Richard, one of the things entrepreneurship has taught me, especially as I'm getting older, I'm not getting any younger, is the power of self-awareness. And some capital brings help for you to know what kind of person you are. You may be a great founder, but a horrible CEO. You may be a great innovator, a horrible administrator. Capital will tell you. Capital will tell you. So sometimes you may say that capital was bad, but maybe you're just not self-aware, that you're not a very good leader. And you need to know, what are my blind spots? Am I a self-righteous, annoying, I don't know, use some
individual
words. Individual. Are you with me?
Yep.
So capital is tricky, but capital can be revealing. And the more you mature, the more capital likes people who have matured, because they understand that you're not gonna get all things ticked in the boxes you want ticked, but you can live with this and not live with that. You make the choices.
Again, I'll stick to this conversation about raising capital. Some of these questions are coming as you speak.
Please.
So I find that some people want capital immediately they're starting the business. And I feel like sometimes you need to not have the capital to not grow, and sort of when should you get capital? Is it okay to sometimes start without capital? And I know that sounds weird saying that, but what are your thoughts on when should you ask for capital?
I think that's a tough one to answer, because end game is always, someone has to know their end game. So yes, it's okay not to start with capital, but how long will you take to scale? Having been exposed to different markets, different countries, there's different flavors to how capital works in certain places, right? Square just made an acquisition of a buy now, pay later business out of Australia and paid billions and billions of dollars for it. That company has never made a profit, right? And Afterpay is the company. And then you've got valuations of other types of businesses that have scaled to 15 countries in the Western world. People don't buy the bottom line, really, in the sense they buy something else in those businesses, which is growth.
Yep.
So sometimes you have to figure out what your end game is. Do you want to get acquired for growth? Do you want to build a family enterprise? If you want to build a family enterprise, what you're saying works. If this is more of a cash cow for you and your wife, for you guys to have a particular way of life every week, knowing that we sold 1 million avocados, it's just you and I, nobody else, so be it. You make a call based on what you want to build. If you have ambitions to say, I would like my business to be valued at $400 million in the next 5 years, if I achieve 1, 2, 3, then you decide how you want to grow. You can't get there without capital.
I get that.
And so this capital opens doors for you, scales for you, helps you grow, helps you understand different things. And capital is different. There's African capital, there's Western capital, there's money that cannot come to Africa, there's money that cannot go out of Africa. You know, you have to really do your homework to know, where do I want to sit? So, case in point, in one of my businesses, I did what you call a pre-seed. And then from a pre-seed series, then I move into a series A. My pre-seed valuations determine how I will, my last pre-seed valuation may determine how I want my series A to be valued. Pre-seed is a place you can get money before the business has really kicked off, but certain things have to be there. Then I go through this process of proving concept. The moment I can prove pilot and that now all I need to do is scale and I can show certain transactions and certain volumes, I get the right people to buy into it. In between that journey, if you consider that a pre-series and then this journey here, there's some advisors you need to get. Some amazing people who can get you to scale the right way. And these guys are found in different parts of the world. You'll find some in London, in New York. They have connections to a lot of funds. So don't necessarily go out on what you call a road show without these guys. So they become very good tellers of your story. They get to understand your business, and there's nothing you're doing. They will ask you very hard questions. They will tell you you're not ready. They will tell you stuff you don't want to hear. I'm now talking to people who want to go this direction. So for you to say, I raised 10 million in Series A Kenya shillings, I want to raise 500 million, pre-series, I want to raise 500 million. You have to have these people.
And let me ask, actually, I think to better articulate my question was, definitely you need capital. But I feel like, is there a perspective of in pre-seed where you may, at such a low valuation, probably the lowest valuation that the company should be at is at pre-seed. Now you're selling off 80% of the company. So from a raising investors perspective, should you have a limitation on the equity that you give out of your business at this pre-seed?
Yeah, so I look at it in a few ways. That's a very good question. So at pre-seed, you have to ask yourself, So you can leave from Nairobi to Mombasa and decide you want to be on the road for 12 hours. Just go stopping, doing whatever. Or you can say I need to be in Mombasa in 4 hours. Your speed will be determined by what time you need to arrive there.
Yep.
Is that fair? So it's the same with a business. The speed at which I need to arrive at my end game should determine what kind of pre-series conversations I'm gonna have. I have no problem being a 20% shareholder, just to give you an idea, of a pre-series game, or of a pre-series raise, where the intention is for me to scale to become a unicorn in 5 years.
Because you'll be 20% of $1 billion company.
10% maybe, because I'll still face some dilution in between.
Even if it's 5%.
$1 billion game. So the important thing is, who is in my pre-series? Who did I bring in? So I selectively picked a particular type of people at pre-series that bring so much value to my end game thinking. It wasn't by chance. And I have no problem with us having smaller shares because the end game is clear. And it's worth the risk. It may never happen, but I am aware by being a 90% shareholder, that's a hard thing to achieve. You're not going to get serious people coming and saying, I'll take 1%.
Yep.
You're not. If you find them, not
for the unicorn valuation,
not of something you haven't built yet. Right? People can take 1% of a very serious organization, but you haven't built it. So sometimes who you may need to have besides money is value. What value do they bring to their table? Are you with me?
100%.
And so you have to understand your end game. Now, if I want to be a farmer and I'm willing to take 25 years to build my farm, then I don't need to give away too much shareholding at the beginning. I want to build a generational company. I'm starting a auto repair shop that I want to build for my children to also take over. I don't need to over engineer my pre-series. I want to stay in control. Even at 20%, you can have a lot of control. It just depends on who are your lawyers and how is that work being done. So you want to reach unicorn as your end game, and unicorn here meaning a business valued at over $1 billion, then you have to play your cards right from who's here in the beginning to who will be at the end. That value chain is extremely important. You want to be a mom and pop shop? Own 98% of your business. Don't be in a rush. Take 12 hours to reach Mombasa. Take your time, but know what you're building and know that it'll give you $1 million here, $2 million there, and sort out your few things here, pay school fees there, but you're not going to go. Let me say this about unicorns. Sometimes in these fast-paced companies, the people who look down upon them, they don't like them because they feel the fundamentals don't make sense. Fundamentals meaning unit economics. What is the bottom line looking like? What's your EBIT? I've seen companies valued at $4 billion that have no EBIT. Zero.
For those who may not understand EBIT explanation.
Earnings before income tax, because that just basically shows your bottom line. So sometimes some of these companies are valued on EBIT. They say that sometimes in fintechs you can get 10 to even 25x EBIT. So if your EBIT is $1 million, you can be valued at $25 million, $10 million, because they can see you have unit economics makes sense. I found that what you'd call European money, London money, loves that brick and mortar type of thinking. American money is very driven towards this growth story. That's why you can find a pre-series in America for $20 million and not find a pre-series in Africa for more than $5 million. Why? Because those guys sometimes are driving a growth conversation. Grow this thing. Uber may never have an EBIT.
Yep.
But I don't want to sound too sophisticated. Sometimes the sacrifice is for an entrepreneur to have EBIT, they decide I won't open in Uganda and Tanzania and Nigeria because if I do, I have to spend money that I'm making. Because of that, I won't have a bottom line.
Yep.
So sometimes to have EBIT, you have to sacrifice growth. So the argument is always, what do you want? Do you want growth or do you want EBIT? And sometimes what I'd call not very ambitious investors, if I can use a kind word, want both.
They want That's rough.
It's very tough for some entrepreneurs to achieve two of those lines that give me growth and give me EBIT. At an early stage of a business, you're not going to achieve those things. So sometimes money you get can be very crude in what it wants you to achieve. And you have to drive and be smart to say, no, I'm going to give you growth. I'm not going to give you EBIT. Because my ambitions, the ambitions of what I've put out in my business plan is to be in 20 markets or to have a diversity of products to bring us to that level. So that's how you look at capital.
Ooh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, let me try and switch up the conversations.
Okay.
Over here a bit. Okay. How do you plan and build cash reserves?